Shalom, party people, and welcome to the 12th Sea. Human factors, norms, but that's the way we've always done it. Talk about 5 words to kill growth right there. That's the way we've always done it. Doesn't matter where you go, doesn't matter how long something's been in place. You start trying to change something and you will get complaints. Even if it's not that good of something that needs to be changed. Hey, this sound equipment that's being used is awful. It sounds like pre-1990 dial-up internet, and it's bad. Maybe we should change it. Okay? But no, we've always had that. I paid for it 20 years ago. Yeah. And it's worn out. I'm sorry you paid for it 20 years ago, but it lived a good life. It's time. People deal with routines all the time. And routines are good. We've talked about that. But sometimes people move from a routine to a rut. Worse, sometimes they build really, really bad habits, and they stick with them. Norms essentially boil down to habits. There are good ones, and there are bad ones. If you have bad norms, it doesn't end well. Put it out on a long enough time frame. Say there's safety checks that have got to be done, and it's your norm to just blow them off. Eventually something's gonna break. Hey, we're supposed to inflate this tire to 100 PSI. It looks fine to me. Kicked it. It's okay. Is it overinflated? Is it underinflated? If it's overinflated, that's not good. If it's underinflated, you're getting premature wear. It's your norm to drive without a seatbelt because it's no big deal. Or worse, you're wearing the seatbelt wrong. Yeah. 1,000 times. It was never an issue. That 1,001, it ends up being a huge problem. But that's the way we've always done it. Or it's always worked for me, never been a problem. Stepping on some toes with this one. It's your norm to procrastinate until the very last second. And then you finally get off your butt and get something done. And you know what? You actually do kind of a halfway decent job. Schoolwork or whatever. And it comes out to where you get an A- on it. That's something to kind of be proud of. Took everybody else, 2 weeks to do it. You did it in 4 hours. Term papers. Happens all the time. You're putting off that project at work, and then, oh yeah, let's get it done. And you do 6 hours worth of work in 45 minutes. Okay. You did it under pressure. Until you forget something that's vitally important. God forbid you forget something that's a safety concern. You put that out on a long enough timeline, eventually somebody gets hurt. That way you've always done it, of procrastinating, it may have worked out for a while. But eventually it doesn't. And in all honesty, if things blew up in our face a little bit more, some of those bad habits would go away. Realize, hey, we have got to change something. Routines do not always cover everything. You could have good routines. I going to do it in this order every single time. There are special circumstances where the routine does need to be broken. Case in point, if you are installing a bolt, typically the rule of thumb is inboard, down, and aft is the direction you want it to be pointing. So that way, if it is under stress at an angle, the likelihood that the bolt stays in place if the nut falls off matters. Inboard, down, and aft. However, if you're working on, let's say, an aircraft that does a lot of aerobatics, go up and do all the loop-de-loops and all the cool stuff, there are some situations where you want to go the exact opposite of that inboard, down, and aft. Because now, because it's doing all these crazy aerobatic maneuvers, you could be putting it in a situation where that inboard, down, and aft would actually cause it to sling the bolt out. Or, a little bit more relevant to a few people who are out there, certain helicopters that have weapon systems attached to them, instead of a normal circuit breaker for the electrical connections that are in there, they will have a momentary push button circuit breaker to where if the breaker were to overheat and pop, now you can push down on it and hold it, and it can still work in an emergency. You may be frying that electrical system, but if you need to dump 100 rounds in a really short period of time, the gunner can hold that circuit breaker down and now continue to fire for a very brief time. And that could be the difference between life and death. In many, many, many other types of critical situations, that style of circuit breaker, oh, hey, it popped, now we're going to go in and we're going to push it down and hold it, you could be causing irreversible damage in just about any other circumstance. So the norm of not including that type of circuit breaker in a lot of things, now we need to break that norm for this one special case of a weapon system. It can matter. Context plays so much into this. Whenever we're trying to defeat norms, the number one question should always be why. Why do we do it this way? If we do it this way, what happens if we do it another way? Is it going to be detrimental to do it another way? We don't want to just scrap everything and try and reinvent the wheel. It works for a reason. But there are certain circumstances where going in and doing something in a very different way can change everything. If you're doing the same type of thing every day, all the time, complacency can become a norm. Sometimes mixing things up can matter. Now, sometimes mixing things up can be detrimental. But the big question is ask why. Why does it need to be done this way? Oh, hey, you know what? That's a really good reason why. Let's keep doing it that way. But if the answer is that's the way we've always done it, that's when we probably should start looking and seeing, is there a better, more efficient, safer, quicker way of doing this? Less expensive way of doing this? A lot of times, we can shatter some of those norms and come out way, way ahead. We always, always, always need to have a good reason why for what we are doing. And just because it's a good reason doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way. So, watch, audit, come back on things that we're doing and say, all right, we now know exactly why we do it this way. Because if we do it another way, this will come back and bite us. Or, hey, you know what? We can afford to change this because we can come out way ahead and learn from past mistakes. I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments about norms. Norms that are good and norms that are bad. Go do hard things.